The late morning sun glowed softly over Riverstone National Bank, a place known for its polished marble floors, perfect air conditioning, and a customer service reputation that was, at least on paper, excellent. But as Dr. Naomi Ellington pushed through the glass doors that day, she immediately sensed something different. The atmosphere was unusually stiff, the kind that suggested judgment, not professionalism. Naomi was a woman of calm presence, tall, elegant, wearing a simple navy dress and a soft gray coat. Her braids were neatly pinned, her eyes thoughtful behind her glasses. She wasn't flashy, not the type to demand attention, but she carried an aura of quiet strength, the kind born from years of hard work, discipline, and faith in herself. In her hand, she clutched a check, large enough to turn heads if anyone knew the amount. But she wasn't thinking about that. She had a flight later that evening, meetings overseas, and she only wanted to deposit it before she left. She approached the counter where a young teller named Melissa stood, cheerful, with other customers but noticeably stiff when Naomi stepped forward. "Good morning," Naomi said gently, sliding the check across. Melissa forced a smile. "Do you have an account with us?" "Yes," Naomi replied. "For 8 years." Melissa typed Naomi's name into the system, her expression tightening. Then she looked at the check. Her face changed. A small, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at her lip. Ma'am," she said, tapping the signature area. "This check looks unusual." Naomi blinked. "Unusual how?" "It's for a very large amount, and we don't typically see checks like this." Her hesitancy wasn't about the check. It was about Naomi. Naomi had felt this before. Subtle doubts, silent assumptions, the quiet suspicion some people reserved only for black customers. She felt it at jewelry stores, at airports, sometimes even at hotel desks. It never got easier. "My company issued it to me," Naomi said patiently. "It's fully legitimate." Melissa didn't look convinced. She lifted a finger. "Let me call my manager." Within seconds, Mr. Grant, a man in a tightly pressed suit, approached. He examined the check with a frown deep enough to crack stone. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "I'm afraid we can't process this." Naomi inhaled sharply. "Why not?" "This check is suspicious." Suspicious. The word stung even though she expected it. "Suspicious in what way?" she asked, keeping her voice calm. Grant avoided her eyes. "It doesn't match your profile." The way he said profile made Naomi's stomach turn. She knew exactly what he meant. Naomi tried to stay composed. "I can provide the issuing company's letter. My ID, passport, account information." Grant cut her off. "We'll need to verify this with our fraud department. You'll have to leave the check with us." "No," Naomi said firmly. "I'm not leaving this check with anyone until you explain what exactly is wrong with it. That's policy." "No, that's discrimination," she corrected quietly. A few customers turned. One woman frowned toward the counter, wondering what was happening. Melissa looked uncomfortable, but Grant seemed almost satisfied with the tension he'd created. "Ma'am, if you don't cooperate, we can't help you. And if you continue raising your voice..." Naomi hadn't raised her voice at all. She stood there in silence, letting his words linger in the air. Then she said the sentence they least expected. "Please call your regional director." Grant chuckled under his breath, amused. "Our regional director doesn't meet with customers, especially not for something like this." Naomi stepped back. "Then I'll wait," she said simply. She took a seat in the lobby, calm, graceful, unbothered. And that moment changed everything. Because the woman they doubted was someone they never imagined. Someone whose name, once revealed, would send shockwaves through the entire bank. But they didn't know that yet. All they saw was a black woman with a large check, and they refused to believe she could possibly be who she was. Naomi sat in the lobby for 20 minutes, her hands folded, her posture calm. But inside, she replayed years of similar moments when she had been questioned, doubted, underestimated. It never hurt any less. The receptionist, noticing the tension, approached Grant cautiously. "Sir, she's still waiting." "She can wait all day for all I care," Grant muttered. "These people come in here thinking..." He stopped when he saw Naomi looking at him. She heard him. He paled slightly but pretended nothing happened. Meanwhile, Naomi quietly pulled out her phone and sent a short message. "Arriving in 15. Please enter the front. Any." She closed her phone and waited. Eventually, the receptionist nervously approached Naomi. "Ma'am, would you like water while you wait?" "That's kind of you," Naomi smiled. "Yes, thank you." The receptionist nodded quickly and walked away. Not everyone was unkind. Some people were simply following the energy around them. But everything shifted when the front doors opened. A man in a charcoal suit walked in, confident, decisive, important. His badge identified him as Michael Langston, Regional Director of Riverstone National Bank. Grant froze. Melissa nearly dropped a stack of papers. The receptionist's eyes widened. Michael stepped forward swiftly. "Dr. Ellington," he said with genuine warmth, "you should have called me sooner." The bank lobby fell into stunned silence. Grant's mouth opened, but no words came. Melissa's jaw dropped. Naomi stood slowly, nodding politely. "Thank you for coming." "Of course," Michael said. "Anything for you?" He turned sharply toward Grant. Why was Dr. Naomi Ellington kept waiting? And why was her check flagged as suspicious? Grant stuttered. "Sir, we didn't know. She didn't tell us who she was." Michael glared. "You refused to ask." The employees watched, horrified. Michael continued. "Do you know who this woman is?" Grant shook his head, face growing pale. Michael exhaled sharply. "Dr. Ellington is one of our largest private asset holders, and she sits on our corporate advisory board." Gasps echoed around the lobby. "She owns 3 medical tech companies," Michael added. "She funds scholarships. She consults for government health initiatives, and she personally helped secure our bank's largest community development loan last year." Grant's knees nearly buckled. Melissa covered her mouth. The receptionist blinked in awe. "And you refused her check?" Michael demanded. "Without verifying anything?" "Sir, she seemed..." "Seemed what?" Michael barked. "Not rich enough for you? Not important enough? Not white enough?" Grant fell silent. Michael shook his head, furious. "Your behavior is unacceptable. You'll face disciplinary review immediately." Then he turned to Naomi, voice soft again. "I'm sorry you were treated this way." Naomi nodded gently. "It happens more often than you know." Michael escorted her to a private office himself. "We'll deposit your check now. No further questions." Inside the office, he processed the check personally, apologizing again and again. But Naomi wasn't angry. She was tired. Tired. In a way only people who have had to prove themselves over and over could understand. The atmosphere in the bank had shifted dramatically by the time. Alicia stepped back into the lobby. Whispers traveled like electricity between the employees, each person fully aware that something monumental had happened behind the office doors. The same staff who had looked at her with suspicion earlier were now watching her with a mixture of guilt and awe. But Alicia didn't bask in their attention. She simply carried herself with the same quiet dignity she had walked in with. Only now, everyone finally saw it. As she waited for the final transaction details, the branch director, Mr. Howard, approached her personally. His expression was earnest, almost shaken. "Dr. Carter," he began gently, "I want to offer my sincerest apologies. What happened today was not just a lapse in judgment. It was a failure of leadership, training, and humanity. This should never have happened." Alicia looked at him steadily. "Thank you for acknowledging that." Mr. Howard exhaled deeply. "I've been reviewing the footage, and I'm appalled. Darren's behavior, it was completely unacceptable. The way he dismissed you, the comments he made, the assumptions, none of that reflects who we claim to be as a company." He paused, shame written across his face. "And that's the problem. We claim to be inclusive, but we clearly failed to ensure those values were lived out." Alicia appreciated the honesty. So often people tried to fix racism with polished corporate statements and excuses. But he wasn't hiding behind a script. He looked shaken because he should be. Before she could respond, 2 tellers came forward. The same ones who had been hesitant and dismissive earlier. One of them, a young woman named Claire, looked like she might cry. I'm so sorry, ma'am," Claire stammered. "I should have helped you sooner. I shouldn't have listened to him. I just didn't want to get in trouble for going against a manager." Alicia's expression softened, but her tone remained firm. "I understand," she said, "but silence makes you part of the problem. Today it was me. Tomorrow it could be someone else. Don't let fear keep you from doing what's right." Claire nodded, wiping her eyes. The lesson had landed deep. Mr. Howard then invited Alicia to sit in his office while the final documentation was printed. As they walked in, he gestured for her to sit. "I'd like to explain what will happen next," he said carefully. Darren has been suspended effective immediately. HR is pushing for full termination, and I agree. Alicia listened quietly, her hands folded in her lap. But, Mr. Howard continued, more important than one person's dismissal is the systemic change we need. So starting tomorrow morning, every employee in this branch will undergo a mandatory training dealing specifically with racial bias, client treatment, and accountability. And not just a surface-level video course, he added. We're bringing in external auditors and educators. Real training, real consequences. Alicia nodded slowly. This was how change happened. Not by firing one person, but by rebuilding a culture that allowed people like him to operate unchecked. He continued, we also reviewed your client profile. You are one of our most valued customers. You've been with us for 12 years. Your contributions and your reputation speak for themselves. Alicia smiled faintly. My position shouldn't determine whether I'm treated with respect. Mr. Howard lowered his head. You're absolutely right. There was a moment of silence, heavy, honest, necessary. Then he cleared his throat. We'd like to offer you a formal written apology, and our legal department will send it by tonight. Additionally, we want to grant you a year of premium services at no cost, including a dedicated advisor, expedited processing, and personal financial support. That isn't necessary, Alicia said gently. What matters most is that this doesn't happen again, to anyone. It won't, he promised. And for the first time, he meant it. When she stepped back out toward the entrance, she noticed the same security guard who earlier had eyed her suspiciously, now standing straighter, almost embarrassed. He held the door for her without uttering a word. As Alicia walked outside, the sunlight poured over her. She paused at the top of the stairs, letting the warmth settle over her shoulders. But before she could take another step, the young woman Claire from earlier ran out after her. Ma'am, Dr. Carter, she called out breathlessly. Alicia turned. Claire looked nervous but determined. I know you probably just want to move on from this day, but I want you to know something. Alicia waited patiently. When I watched what happened today, it made me realize how often I've stayed quiet, not just here, everywhere. I see things, I hear things, and I look away. I shouldn't have. I'm going to change that. Alicia placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. That's how change starts, she said. Not by being perfect, by choosing courage every day. Claire nodded, a bit teary, and walked back inside. As Alicia turned to leave, her phone buzzed. It was her mother. Baby, did everything work out at the bank? Alicia smiled softly. Yes, Mama, everything worked out. Better than I expected. Her mother sighed in relief. I'm proud of you. You always stand tall, even when the world tries to shrink you. Alicia swallowed a lump in her throat. I learned it from you. When she finally reached her car, she paused one last time to look back at the bank, a place where she had walked in invisible, but walked out unstoppable. Inside those walls, something had changed forever. Not just policies, not just consequences. People. A manager who believed his bias was harmless had been exposed. A group of employees had felt the sting of their own silence. And a corporate branch had awakened to the weight of its responsibility. They would remember this day. They would remember her voice. They would remember their failure, and the chance they had to rise above it. It was a lesson they would never forget. And as Alicia drove away, she carried with her something far greater than a check. She carried the knowledge that she had sparked change. Not through anger, not through shouting, but through truth, courage, and unwavering dignity. And that, more than anything, was the legacy she left behind.